Our next speaker is Dunning Catanach. Catherine is an instructor of communication arts and sciences at Penn State Berks, where she teaches about fake news so that her students can determine whether they are digesting valuable and critical news, and so they can fact check and verify credible news sources. Before joining PSU Berks, she taught public speaking and public relations at Kutztown University and was an adjunct in the MBA program at Alvernia. She has more than 20 years of marketing and public relations experience in both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. She earned a bachelor's from Moravian College in advertising communications and a master's from Drexel in arts administration. She is an accredited member of the Public Relations Society of America. Catherine.
Good evening. Both of these work, that's awesome. I teach PR, I teach business communications, and I teach public speaking to mostly first-year students coming into college, which is a lot of fun. And so when we come up to this fake news concept, we at Penn State work very hard to make sure that our students are doing good critical analysis work in terms of their research and their scholarship. So a couple of things that I'm going to go over tonight is give you a little bit of a historical perspective, break down some fake news, and because I'm a professor, I have a quiz for you. We're going to talk a little bit about psychology, some fact checking, and give the best practices for evaluating media. So in getting ready for tonight, I was thinking about what was the big first major disruptor that came on the scene for us as a society, as cultural people who consumed media. And really the big disruptor was Gutenberg and his press. I mean, that was sort of like, back in the Middle Ages, that's the internet of the day. So, and there's lots of scholars out there that have done research on this and can talk about it, but I found this quote that I thought was really interesting from Ronaldo Rosaldio, who wrote an article called The Cultural Impact of the Printed Word. And what's so fascinating about this quote is that he talks about how out of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, we got all of this enormous disruption, but we really got a cultural explosion, and that really set us up for some major changes. But take into consideration that while those folks at that time were in it, they didn't realize what was happening, and it took another 100 years on the other side of the Reformation and the Enlightenment to figure that out. So when you think about that from a historical perspective, about what those folks were going through to what goes on now in an internet minute, a hot internet minute, you think about how much information is now digested, redigested for you, and where you can spend your time in 60 seconds. It's pretty amazing. So the other thing that I want to talk about is what is fake news. I think we want to break that down just a little bit. So we're looking at satire, parody, imposter sites, factual news sites, mixed fake, real news, hyperpartisan, pseudoscience, clickbait, and some of those logos up there you might actually recognize. So get ready, here's your quiz. Here's a bunch of headlines. And I'm gonna ask you, which one of those do you think is for The Onion? You all know what The Onion is, right? That's a satirical newspaper. Anybody want to venture a guess what that is?
I think that's the pillow fight.
The pillow fight. Well, let's see if you're right. It looks like study links binge eating to stress is the real one. So headlines are another part of this piece that is really interesting. I mean, the media writes a great headline, they want you to buy, they want you to subscribe, they want you to get to the other side of the paywall, they want you to pick up the newspaper, it needs to be on the top half of the fold. And so this is one of the ways that we do that, So think about that, and I'm gonna go into Derek's world just a little bit. He went into the echo chamber concept, and I'm going to talk a little bit about cognitive bias. The cognitive bias is that, we like things sort of already chewed up and a little bit digested for ourselves first before we consume it. And so we really like things, we automatically go to this place where we're simplifying information and processes and, our strategies in our head. And therefore, we tend to look at information that we agree with. And we tend to look at that more and more. And as Derek said, then we form this echo chamber of likeness. And so that becomes an issue for us, especially when we bump up to our friends on Facebook who suddenly have an opinion that's not yours and you're unfriending them. So that us versus them thing is something that we need to make sure that we're keeping some awareness around. So at PSU, we spend a great deal of time with our fabulous librarians, and I think one of our librarians is here tonight with us, Alex. She helped me put a lot of this together, and we as professors work really hard to make sure that students are understanding what media is and what is appropriate. So we're looking to make sure that authors, that we're checking to see who is the author of the publication. Does the publication have a particular point of view? And does it relate to your point of view? And who is the audience in the article? Who's the audience for the article? What evidence does the author use to support that point of view? And also to ask the very important question is, when I'm reading that article, what's missing? Is it data? Is it scholarship? Is it, what is it that is going to make you say, is this real, or is this believable, is this credible? And one of the things that I want to stop here and have you take in for a minute is that organizations like the Public Relations Society of America and the Society for Professional Journalists all have codes of ethics. They're trained. Even at universities where we're training journalists and we're training public relations people. This is something that they are educated about, and when they leave the academy, they have a code of ethics. So keep that in mind as you are also digesting media. On campus, we have something fun called the CRAP test. We usually march our freshmen into the library and we go over these very basic tenets for them when they're looking at resources. And it's something that we too, as consumers of media, need to be aware of. That you need to make sure that your information is timely. Is it current? Is it relevant? Where is the importance of the information with your needs? Is it relevant to you and to the audience? What about the authority? Who is it? Is this a credible expert that is giving this information out? Is it accurate? Is it reliable? Is it truthful and correct in its content? And then, again, what's the purpose? What's the reason for the information that it exists? And so those are things that we work very hard to make sure that students and anybody else that's, when you're looking at media is taking this in, and you should be thinking about the CRAB test. So tomorrow morning, when you're looking at whatever it is that you're going to consume on your handheld device, start thinking, like, does this hold up? Does this meet the CRAB test? Which is kind of a fun thing to say to yourself at 7:30 in the morning. Fact-checking, there's some great fact-checking websites out there, whether it's the Washington Post or All Slides or Snoops or factcheck.org. These are terrific sites to go to. There is a professor, Melissa Zamdar's out at Merrimack College, and she's come up with basically a checklist for her students. And this is a pretty good checklist, I think, for all of us. And when you're looking at a URL online, to make sure that it's a real URL, whether it's abcnews.com, that's a legitimate site. If you're looking at it and it's got .co or anything else after that, not so much. Don't trust that. Go back and look at what you're digesting and making sure that those URLs are appropriate and legitimate media sources. This professor has also put together, and you can see at the bottom, this comes from a Minnesota PR News website. She actually has out on the web, and it's open, a list in a Google Doc sheet of over 1,000 websites that are bogus websites, over 1,000. So there's a lot of media out there that's not appropriate. So make sure that you're also looking at the About page on the website. This should have some critical information about vision and mission, and it should be pretty concrete information when you first read it. The other thing you can do is read comments. Often people will immediately out a source that it's not appropriate, so read those comments too. Look at the quotes in the story. See if they're actually by an expert in the field. You look at the quote and see if it's searchable. So this is sort of a great thing that we use in college. And when you have a student who is putting something in their paper, all you need to do is type in like the first 4 words of the quote, and it'll come right up on Google. That's how we catch a lot of plagiarism in our world. So if you can do this, and it should take you right to the source, and Google does a great job of that. And the other thing that you can do is if you find an image that you think does not correlate with the story, then right-click on that and send it into a reverse Google search, image search, and it'll come right up. It'll come right up and tell you that, well, that was really from a movie that was shot by Spielberg, 5 years ago, versus, something that had to do with a recent article about, Zionists or something like that. So some takeaways, and this also goes to what Derek said. Keep your emotions in check, and then do some fact checking. Okay, before you have, full out kind of like, this is crazy. Go check that organization and check where you're getting that information from. Also remember, perspective does not equal bias, and look for the content and substance, not on the surface. Don't just scratch it. Go a little further, and then make sure that you're finding that original material that that you can go to, that you can have some clarity about. And lastly, I love that Derek brought up memes, because I have to leave you with a meme, because I have my own personal conspiracy theory that the whole internet was set up for cats by cats with cats. So thank you so much. A special shout out to our PSU librarians and our research coaches, because they are on our front lines of getting our students thinking critically and having that critical analysis skills that they need to take into the world as adults. Thank you very much.